I'm Eva, and that's me over there working on my motorcycle. And my co-host this evening is Kris Fant. She's on that side of my screen anyways.
Hi, I'm Kris. I'm a Revit Women's Team and BDR ambassador. I'm a writer. I'm in my garage in case I thought it would add some authenticity and in case I need to grab any tools. And you can find me on Instagram at Free Spirit Pixie.
I love that. Awesome. Kris, thanks so much for being here tonight. Ladies, we're going to go through a ton of stuff. We're going to hammer the information. We're going to cruise really fast through way too much information. We're going to talk about the anatomy of an adventure bike. We're going to go through the TCLOCS checklist, what that is, give you a few tools, tips, and techniques, and then somebody's going to get to win that cruise tools kit. So without any further ado, I wanted to put together a little anatomy of an adventure bike. We will share this graphic on our website, so this is not the only time that you'll get to see it, and it's not totally accurate. Like, for example, this is not where the rear hub / wheel bearings are, so I can tweak that too. But these are some of the main failure points, the things you're going to hear the most often from your mechanic when something is going wrong. And so without any further ado, we'll just start up here. The fuel lines are not in the seat. They run down here below. It's how the gas gets from the tank to the motor. But you've got fuel filters in those fuel lines. Always can be a point of failure. You've got your chain and rear sprocket. That does not apply to our shaft drive ladies out there on big GSs and Tiger 1200s and whatever else. It might. Maybe somebody here has a belt drive motorcycle. I don't even know. But the chain and rear sprocket's all going to be back here. This is the spoked wheel. You can either have spoked wheels or mag wheels. This bike has spokes. Things can go wrong there. Your rear shock is that big old spring in the back underneath the seat. Kickstand switch. This is just one of those things. I'm pretty sure there's somebody out there, and it's not just me, who couldn't figure out why their bike wasn't starting when you're in the middle of nowhere and it was a kickstand switch failure. Know where it is, know that it can cause problems, know that it will make your bike not start if something goes wrong with it when you're out in the backcountry. And it can be one of those kind of weird, elusive, mysterious things. You can also put a bypass on there if you're pretty sure that you're never going to ride away with your kickstand down ever again. Here's your engine case that's full of oil. That's really important. You don't want the oil to be coming out of the bike. You want the oil to be staying in the bike. You've got a radiator, which is separate from your coolant reservoir, but they work together to make sure that your bike is of proper temperature when it's running. Up here in the front, you got your brake discs, you've got brake calipers, you've got brake pads, you've got all the brake things right up here. You've also got them in the back. Your front hub and your front wheel bearings are right here. Your ABS sensor, if you have ABS, if you're a high-tech modern bike, all that action is going to be up here. Your fork seals and your front suspension works in conjunction with the rear suspension to make sure that your bike is nice and flush. And fork seals, if you're riding in the dirt can get up in there. There's a little gasket around in there, and you can clean that out with something little itty bitty and scrape it around and make sure that you're not leaking anything out on the front. You've got levers on your handlebars, and you've got one for your brake and one for your clutch. I hope that we all know that. Unless you're a DCT person, then you don't have the clutch. You got your steering head bearing right up here in the front. This is the triple clamp where everything comes together on the front end of the bike. You got a brake fluid reservoir here. This one's for the front brake. You're going to have one for the rear brake as well down here. And you've got your steering head bearing. Again, look at that. You might even have two. Just kidding. You're only going to have one. But those are some of the most common things that you're going to have fail or need to tweak. And these are also some of the most accessible things that you can put eyes on and even get in and start fixing yourself.
All right, so one of the ways to start to really get to know your bike, the way to really start to doing maintenance on your bike is by washing it. So if you can talk yourself into washing your bike and chain after every off-road ride, you'll start to get to know parts of the bike. I am one of these people that 12 years ago, before I started riding motorcycles, I drove my car to the shop and they waved some magic wands and then they would give it back to me and hopefully it would work. So I am not somebody who came by understanding how to do bike maintenance naturally. This has all been a learning process. And I think 12 years ago, my partner handed me a pressure washer and said, go spray my bike. And I'm like, okay. And I probably missed half the bike. So the longer you spray, the more you see. And spraying is a great way to get to know like what is underneath the dirt. You can also check as you're spraying for leaks. Every ride, check your air filter and clean it. We're going to do a little bit more detail about that later. Also checking for missing bolts as you're spraying. It's a great time to see holes where they might have been covered with dirt before. They probably might supposed to have a bolt in them. So the other thing you can do to get to know your bike really well is take a lot of pictures. We all like to take pictures of our bike in beautiful settings, but you can take pictures, close-ups of all the different parts of your bike so that later when you're looking at your bike, I'm looking at one right now and I'm like, is there supposed to be a hole there? Is there supposed to be a bolt in that? I can check my pictures from 2 months ago or from June 19th when everybody runs out and does this. And I can be like, yeah, there's actually supposed to be a hole in that part, or excuse me, a bolt in that part of my bike.
I love that. All right, next up, we are going to dive into the TCLOCS checklist. The Motorcycle Safety Foundation developed this acronym called TCLOCS. It stands for T is tires and wheels, C is controls, lights, oils, chassis and chain and stands. You can all read. And MSF puts this together in a very boring, dull looking document. So we redesigned it, made it a whole lot prettier, and we will make this available to you gals tonight in the chat. And this is just a really helpful reference point. The TCLOCS checklist goes through all of the major systems on your motorcycle. And now you don't need to go through it with a fine-tooth comb every single time that you go out riding, but you do want to familiarize yourself with all of the places where something can go wrong, where something can break, or where something should maybe be paid attention to. And this one's really cute. We put it together with a little bit of SheADV branding. And over here on the side is a little tear-off sheet. So you can print this out, you can cut that off, laminate it, throw it in your tank bag. So you just have a little point of reference for all of these systems when you're out in the field or when you're on a big road trip or whatever the case may be. It's just a really good reference and really nice to have. Plus, it's SheADV chartreuse green, and it's really cute. And people will be jealous, and boys everywhere will be like, "Where'd you get that cool TCLOCS checklist?" And you'd be like, never mind, boys. Anyhow, the T starts with tires. Take it away, Kris.
Yeah, so tires are one of the things that literally every ride, I think it's important to check. It is the point of contact between me and the road, and it is two very small points of contact. So starting with tire pressures, you can check your manual, know the pressure that you're supposed to have in your bike, and check it every single ride. Especially when the weather is doing drastic changes, your tire pressures will do slightly more drastic changes. Also, if you're riding off-road, you're doing technical off-road riding, you're doing a BDR, you may decrease your tire pressures for the more technical terrain to give you a little bit more grip. Totally fine. That's always, always helpful and advisable, but keep a pump with you because you're going to want to get back up to street pressures so that you have the right amount of, again, contact patch, and it will help your tires last longer if you have the right amount of tire pressure. Also checking your tread depth. The more knobby, the more grip you have off-road. So know your tread depth and always be inspecting your tires for I've just forgotten the name, the metal that can start to show through. If you see that, that is time for an instant tire change. Is that coming to you, Eva?
The Band-Aid.
Yeah. Yes.
I was reading all the great questions and all the reasons everyone wants to win the
My brain just stopped there. Also take a peek at the wear pattern. What you'll see on your tires after riding them on the street for quite a while, if you're running knobbies, is you'll notice what we call cupping, and it's well named. It looks like a cup that can hold some water. That's usually a sign it's time to think about changing your tires, but also plan your tire changes around your trips. If I'm about to do a BDR and I'm about to leave from my front door and do Oregon, I will change my tires here, but if I'm going to drive to Colorado or Arizona, I'm probably going to try to use up my older tires and get down there and have them do a fresh tire change. So I have really great knobbies for the BDR trip. While you're down there, take a peek at your wheel bearings and the seals. To check your wheel bearings, you really gently move the tire or the wheel back and forth. And if you feel any what they would call play, any really slight movement in there, your wheel bearings might be giving up. Also looking around the seals to see if anything's leaking. Take a peek at your spokes while you're there. Look for any spokes that are bent, broken, or missing. Occasionally you can check the tightness of your spokes. It's very fun. You just tap them with something metal and it makes a lovely sound. And when one sounds different than the others, that one is probably not tight enough. Take a peek at your tires too for anything like nails or screws that might be in your tires. You might have appropriate tire pressures, but should that screw back out, you would no longer have appropriate tire pressures. And then of course, while you're down there, also checking your brakes, your pads, your brake rotors, and your, any part of your braking system that you can see.
Awesome. Did you already talk about tubes versus tubeless, Kris?
No, sorry, I did not. So know your tires. Do you have tubed tires? Do you have tubeless tires? There's two different types that come from the factory. And then you can also add tubeless tires to your bike. So know if you're buying a used bike, what kinds of tires you have, because you're going to want to carry tubes for tubed tires. You can carry a plug kit for tubeless tires. And the great thing about tubeless is that it runs a lot like a tubeless tire where I can plug it, but it has a high pressure tube inside of it. So I have to know that I have to fill up two different tire pressures. One's 120 PSI and the other is whatever my bike says it's supposed to be at.
So cool. And there's no way to puncture that high pressure tube if you're like jamming a reamer in there to get a plug in your tube.
Something to be careful of, but yeah, you can plug them.
Cool. I'm intrigued by this system. Awesome. All right, moving on down the TCLOCS, we've got the controls and the lights. When you're looking at your motorcycle before or after your ride, you want to go through all of the basics on your controls, and it starts up at the handlebars for me anyways. You'll find your own systems. And really, ladies, it's not about knowing how to fix everything on your motorcycle. It's not about doing it exactly like anybody else does. It's about creating a familiarity with your machine so that you can be an informed participant in making sure that your bike runs really well, right? It's the process of empowerment and understanding and learning, and there's always more to learn. So start following a rhythm, find a pattern for how you like to check this stuff, use your TCLOCS, but really create your own tips and techniques so that you know what to expect every time you put your hands on that motorbike. Up at the handlebars, you want to make sure that your handlebars are true, that they are straight as they should be. I don't know if anybody here has ever dropped their motorcycle. I know I certainly haven't, but sometimes when you drop your motorcycle, the handlebars get knocked out of whack and you ride for the rest of the day with your hands slightly askew. Well, when you get home, unless you had a real bad get off, it's not that your handlebars have probably bent. It's probably just that they've gotten knocked sideways in that center clamp. So what you'll want to do is you want to loosen those bolts, get them back to true, and crank those puppies back down. You'll want to make sure that your levers, both your brake lever and your clutch lever, are pulling just as they should, and that they're set up appropriately for your hands. If you have big hands, you can leave them far away. If you have small hands, you can bring them in close. But just make sure that those levers are set well so that they're easy to operate when you're on the trail and when you're riding, and that they're moving freely, and that there's no stickies or hitches or unnecessary play that's not activating the actual lever in a way that isn't appropriate. Ditto for your brake pedal, make sure that thing moves really nice. Make sure on the brake side that you have a completely pressurized system. If you're ever swapping a tire, if you've ever had a wheel off, if you've ever compressed your brake pads or your brake pistons to move a wheel, make sure that you pump your brakes back up so that they are fully functional, right? It's like once like when you put your tire back on or put your wheel back on, the first thing you'll do is you'll go to squeeze your brake and you realize you have no brakes. It's because it's a pressurized system and you got to pump it back up, get that fluid back up to pressure. So make sure both of your brakes are operating normally. Make sure your shift lever, your shifter on your foot kicks up and down as it should. Make sure that you can find neutral somewhere in between first and second with relative ease. It's easier on some bikes than others, but make sure that you can get your bike into neutral when need be. Make sure that your cables are running smooth. Visually inspect everything coming off your handlebars for unnecessary wear and tear. Make sure that they're running smoothly. Make sure that there's enough play and enough length in those cables that as you move your handlebars back and forth, nothing is binding or catching. If you're tall like me and you're running bar risers, you've extended your cables further than somebody who's running their bars at stock height. So there's more opportunity to stretch those cables and find wear places once you've tweaked with things. You want to make sure that your throttle snaps back. So you just twist your throttle, let go, and it should snap back to that original position. Super, super critical. Make sure that all your switches are there. I've definitely looked down at my handlebar and been missing a light switch. Make sure you know where they are, make sure the plastic is intact, make sure that they're super functional, and pay super close attention to anything aftermarket, right? We've all got GPSs and phone chargers and electric vest plugger inner things, and we've got all kinds of doohickeys attached to our motorbikes. And I fully believe that anything aftermarket is far more likely to fail than anything that is integral to the original design of the motorcycle. So pay special attention to any accessories you put on to the bike afterwards. Also with your lights are so important, not just so that you can see when it starts getting dark, but lights and having good lighting on your motorcycle is one of the #1 safety features that we can have. Now, if you're a dirt bike gal and you just throw the truck in the bike and drive the truck, or throw the bike in the truck and drive the truck to the trail, you probably don't have a headlight or turn signals or anything like that. But if you're an adventure bike gal and you are pulling out of your driveway to ride to the trail that you're going to get on, please make sure that you have good lights, that all your lights work, and make sure you're checking your right and left blinkers, make sure you're checking your high beams, make sure you're checking your brake lights on the front, with the front and the rear brake pedal, because we want those to activate at all times. Really, it is one of the #1 safety features. So same thing too, if you have any aftermarket lights, any aux lights that you've put on there, make sure those are all in good working order before you head out.
All right, O is for oil and fluids. So checking your oil levels, most bikes will have an oil sight glass. So standing your bike straight up and down on a flat level surface, check in the oil sight glass. There's usually a couple of lines that your oil can fall between, but it's right about the center place that most bikes are supposed to have their oil levels. I've also seen a system where you back out a bolt, and if a little bit of oil drips out, that means that you have enough oil in your bike. So that's a less usual system, but it is one you may come across. Checking your coolant levels. There's usually your radiator, and there is sometimes a separate coolant reservoir. So never check your radiator while your bike is hot, because that is a pressurized system. But check your coolant levels before you ride while your bike is cool, either in your radiator and the coolant chamber reservoir, coolant reservoir. Make sure that you have coolant in there. Looking at your brake fluid, there's that little brake reservoir on your handlebars. It's got a little sight glass in it usually. There's also a brake reservoir down by your rear brake. Take a peek at it both for levels and color. We can get dirt in our brake systems. Brake fluid is also something you're going to want to change out once a year. Most of these have changing and maintenance intervals in your manual, but brake fluid is hydroscopic, so it will grab water from your environment, and you want to make sure that there's no water in your brake fluid, because it boils at a lower point than brake fluid will make your brakes not work. Checking your fuel filters if you can get eyes on them, making sure there's no grime or grit in there. Checking your fuel level. I am guilty of having left work all excited to ride because it was a sunny day, taking the long way home and having to call for help because I had no fuel in my bike. So know your fuel level before you take off on your motorcycle. And then also do a quick visual inspection for any leaks. Again, when things are leaking, they typically will attract some dirt, so that's a great thing to look for. You can also look for any fluids that are under your bike.
Love that. Awesome. I'm not going to mention the snarky comment that Kris made when we were doing our practice run about finding fluids under your motorcycles. It had nothing to do with Harley Davidsons, I swear. Just teasing you all. We love all motorcycles here. I just couldn't help it. We love all motorcycles here. All right. The second C in TCLOCS, it stands for your chassis and your chain. The chassis is basically what your motorcycle is built upon. It is the foundation of your bike. It consists of the frame, which is welded metal, and at any of those weld points, or if you've had a bad get off, that frame, even where it's not welded, can crack. So just make sure you're visually inspecting the entire frame of the motorcycle. And the swing arm is this thing that sticks off the back of the frame and connects the rear wheel. Make sure that is all intact and free of any unusual wear or tear. Just like any other aftermarket accessories, you want to make sure that your crash protection, anything that you have bolted on, is just as it should be, that there's no missing bolts, that everything is intact and not bent unnecessarily. I always like to pay good attention to my crash protection after I've had a big day of riding, even if I haven't fallen specifically. Like, I have definitely been riding along and taken some big rocks to that bash plate underneath and found that it has come out of position ever so slightly, right? It can, you don't want it rubbing against these header pipes underneath. You want everything, when you put your crash bars on, if there was a 1/4 inch of clearance all around, you want to make sure there's always a 1/4 inch of clearance in between that and the plastics or the metals underneath, even after every single ride. Make sure all your bolts are in place. Look for any weird gaping holes. And of course, there are some strange holes on motorbikes. Sometimes there are places where there just aren't supposed to be bolts, but what you'll do is you'll look back at all those photos you took after Trailside when Kris said you should take pictures of all the places on your bike, and you'll be like, oh yeah, there was never a bolt there. I don't need to put a bolt there. If you do find you're missing bolts and you don't have the appropriate replacement bolt, go to the local AutoZone. If you don't have a thread checker of your own, go to the local AutoZone or hardware store or fastener parts store. They've got a thread checker, so anybody can help you find the correct size bolt. Don't just cram something in there and go cross-threading stuff and stripping stuff out. Be really attentive when you're replacing bolts. It's just super important. Also, that steering head bearing, I talked about that a little bit before. When your bike's up on the center stand, rotate, make sure that your handlebars move freely and that there isn't any hitches or glitches in that process of moving your handlebars. If you feel anything weird, anything other than a smooth glide, you've probably got a problem with your steering head bearing. You're going to want to swap that out. It's going to make riding really lousy. You're going to want to check your suspension. If you have any sort of remote reservoirs on your suspension, you'll want to make sure that no fluid or grease or oil or anything else is coming out anywhere that it shouldn't be. You'll want to check your engine case and your transmission to make sure that there's no cracks or leaks or gasket leaks or anything like that. We want the fluids to stay on the inside of the motorcycle. That's where they should be. With regards to chain and sprockets, you're going to want to check your chain tension. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Everybody's bike has the appropriate chain tension for their motorcycle, but you're going to want to check that on a regular basis, and you're going to want to look for wear and tear on your chain and sprockets. You'll go through several chains before you have to swap your sprockets. But as soon as your sprockets start looking unusual, as soon as they start looking like they have any uneven wear, or if they have any sort of strange shapes to them, any pointing or hooking or grabbing or anything that looks like it's not going to smoothly deliver that chain around and around from one link to the next, it's time to start thinking about swapping out your sprockets for fresh ones. Also put an eye on this chain guard back here. It's usually going to be some sort of a plastic bit. Make sure that that's intact and that it's not going to come out and get all ground up inside your chain.
All right, the S is for stands. So you've got most people have a side stand on their bike. Some people also have a center stand. So what you're looking for when you're checking those is, are there loose bolts or springs? Are there cracks or bends? I usually like to flip mine up and just wiggle it back and forth manually. You get to know just how much play is or isn't in there when it's how it feels typically. And that way, if you notice more play, you'll know that maybe your bolt is loose, that something is bent. I've had springs fly off of my kickstand, which is okay in the moment. Then your kickstand doesn't stay up, so you can't ride away with it like that.
Oh, sorry, ladies. I'm looking at questions again. There's so much good stuff going on in the chat. I love it. I love it. All right, on to our tools. Has everybody who maybe wants to win the cruise tools put something in the chat about wanting to win the cruise tools? Yes, I love that. Love to hear that. I love my tools. I have like all my tools with me on my desk. It's like my little security blanket. I am really proud of my toolkits. I've kind of perfected them. I don't know that they're perfected. There's always tweaks and tunes, but like, I love these little tool roll-ups. These ones are custom. handmade little roll-ups that have everything I need right inside here. And I have a tendency to work out of my on the bike toolkit as much as humanly possible. When I'm in my garage, there are some additional things that I don't keep with me on my bike. I don't often use the drill, but Kris tends to really like one, so we've got it here. I've got ratchets in my toolkit, but like a long breaker bar and any sort of ratchet and extensions I keep in my garage. Just to make lighter work. The longer the lever, the easier it is to get the bolt off. A torque wrench is something, it's more of a specialty tool, but if you start finding that you're working on motorcycles a lot, every bolt should be tightened to a certain amount. And that would be the torque on a bolt. And it's going to be measured in Newton meters. And a torque wrench is just something to keep in your garage and to have. And it's really, really helpful so that you're not over tightening or under tightening as you're putting pieces on and off.
For your drill or for your ratchet, there are also socket sets. There are torque sockets, there are hex sockets. Those are such nice garage tools to have. I don't tend to carry things that look exactly like that on the bike because they're bigger and bulkier than my small tool set for the bike. But I think it's helpful to just get a visual of like your bike with all of its aftermarket parts will probably have bolts and bolts that will take any of these 3.
Awesome. Whoops, I skipped more tools. Were you done with that one, Kris?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Other tools. Screwdrivers, super, super, super handy. I find that a flathead screwdriver is just as useful for prying things off as it is for the few times that I need to use this on my bike. I find that Phillips head is super common. I keep a bigger one and a smaller one in my toolkit at all times. And then there's a JIS that I don't personally have, but Kris also uses, and it's common for bleeding your brake lines for the brake master cylinder. Wrenches, I set up my wrenches specific to the bike that I'm riding. I might bring a couple of extras, like if I only need an 11 and a 13, according to what people recommend for my specific bike, I'll typically throw a 12 in there as well. I will also typically have a couple of adjustable wrenches just in case. If ideally these are not super precision and you are more likely to damage bolts with an adjustable wrench, so don't rely on it, but it is a good thing to have. I like to keep 1 or 2 of them just depending on the bike and depending on the day. Good to have in a pinch. Crescent wrench, combination wrenches. You've got your open end, you've got your box end. I've got ratcheting ones as well, which are really, really nice. It just speeds up the process on the box end. And you can really get jamming really quick with those. I thought I had one right here, but I think I have to dig through my other bag to pull one out. Tire pressure gauge and pump is super important. I separate my tire tools from my other tools. So I've got a tire specific kit. So if I get a flat, I don't need to take out all of my tools. I just need to pull out this kit and it's got everything I need to do a tire change. Loctite is super useful. There's Loctite is like a thread locker. Really useful if you're taking off any of your aftermarket stuff or if you're replacing any OEM bolts on there, and make sure that you're not vibrating out any screws or bolts. Just a little drop will do it. It just helps keep those bolts in place against the vibration of the motorcycle and when you're riding along on anything bumpy. Your shop manual. I keep the shop manual on my shelf, but I always keep my OEM shop manual in digital version in my phone. So I have it with me pretty much wherever I go if there is something I need to look up. That shop manual is where you're going to find very often torque specs on major bolts. It's going to tell you service intervals for things that you need to fix and repair. And it's just going to give you a bunch of different helpful tips. And it's just captivative reading. So like if you're in your tent at night and are having a bout of insomnia, get out that shop manual. You'll be asleep in no time. Needle nose pliers are awesome and indispensable. I also keep this little awl. It's like a little poker. I swear I use this thing so much for everything. There's always random things that I need to pick at or hold in place or get at. And this thing is absolutely one of those random tools, which I don't know, it takes up a lot of space, but dang, I love the thing and I find it so useful. And a chain breaker is super important too if you're running a chain. And yeah, gosh, I could go on and on about all of this stuff. Let's move on to some techniques because I want to save plenty of time for questions.
So when you're thinking about working on your bike, thinking about how we use our bodies and how we use gravity to our advantage can be really helpful. Some of those bolts are on there very, very tight. So using our body weight to help move bolts or using a pushing motion, I have a lot more strength pushing than I do pulling. So you can see Eva in this picture using both body weight and pushing to loosen the tire from the rim. Anytime you can press down, you're using gravity to your advantage, and we have a lot of power in our legs. So I think it's important for us to remember that if we can, like when I'm trying to take an axle bolt out, I'll get the tool on there, and if I cannot manually get it with my hands, I will just kick it with a foot, and that will often help seal the deal. For easy reassembly, it's helpful to store the bolts in the same place you took them out of if you can do that. That way you don't have to remember where the bolts go. So you take your plastics off, put the bolts back in the holes. Then when you go to remount your plastics, you just remove the bolts and put them right back where they were. You can take pictures as you disassemble because as you remove layers of your bike, it's going to look different than the pictures you took originally. And one of the tricks that I've used is using an ice cube tray for bolts. So I'll label where I took the bolt from. If I can't put it back onto the bike, I'll stick it in the ice cube tray with a label on it so that later when I'm putting the bike back together, I know where the bolt came from. A couple of sayings that have been really helpful to me is righty tighty, lefty loosey. That's one of those that if you are under your bike pulling out an oil drain plug, it is really helpful and important to remember that the position of right and left can get transposed. I have stripped an oil drain bolt before. Another good one to remember is start them all before you tighten any. So if you have, I'm looking at like the front of the forks, there are sometimes like 4 bolts that hold a plate on. You want to start all 4 of those bolts before you tighten all of them down, because if you start 1 or 2, it's going to pull down unevenly. You're not going to have the surfaces flush together. Let's see here. Also keeping track of the jobs that you do in a logbook. I like to do this in Excel, like Google spreadsheets, so that I know what maintenance has been done on which bike when. That way, if I go to the shop, I can say, yes, I did my oil change. Yes, I changed my brake fluid, or the brakes still aren't working. And also, if you're working with a partner, we both participate in like oil changes. So I can look back at the logbook and say, yeah, it was done in March. I don't need to worry about it right now.
Love that. Super smart. Okay, a couple little things. Cleaning your chain. Here is Kris diligently cleaning your chain. Cleaning your chain and maintaining proper chain tension is critical to extending the life of your chain and therefore your sprockets. Plus, it's absolutely all about safety and motorcycle performance as well. So you want to keep your chain clean and lubricated. Obviously, 1200 GS ladies, shaft drive ladies, this does not apply to you. But the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get that rear wheel up off of the ground. So you can put it up on your center stand if you have one. You can prop it up on a log if that's what you happen to have sitting around in your garage. You can use a floor jack, whatever you need to do, but get that rear wheel up off the ground so you can spin it freely. This is a really good time to jump in on that TCLOCS and make sure that your tire is in good working order too. Make sure that your spokes are all intact, that nothing's bent and out of whack. But you're going to want to wash the chain, make sure it's nice and clean. I never recommend pressure washing your chain. Very often you've got a chain with O-rings and you can destroy those O-rings if you get in there with a super high pressure wash. You want to just get in there with a big old scrubby scrub brush and make it all nice and freshy fresh and super clean. You can use a kerosene based or a WD-40 type cleaner. You can get a chain cleaner kit. And you're going to want to use a little brush to get it all nice and cleaned off. And then you're going to want to rinse it super clean. You want to make sure you don't leave any of those chemicals on there. And as you're going through the cleaning process, you're spinning that rear wheel and cleaning the chain, and you're doing both sides plus the top and bottom. Think of a chain like a little box. There's the outside that you can see, there's the inside that you can't see, and there's the top and the bottom. And you want to think about that anytime you're lubricating your chain as well. And you're going to want to make it nice and dry. You're going to want to inspect your chain tension with the bike on the ground. So with the bike on the ground, on the center stand, there's going to be a certain amount of play in the chain for your motorcycle. You're going to want to look that up in your manual. And you're going to want to know, and you'll just start to know, like when you first get the bike, you might be like, oh, wait, is that too much? Is that too little? Maybe the first time or two that you adjust your chain, but over time, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I want, I want about that much play in there, right? If the thing is coming up real far and like slapping the underside of the bike, you've probably got way too much chain tension in there. And I always check it on the bottom. Some people check it on the top, but you kind of just tell by feel. And you want to adjust your chain tension so that your bike runs perfectly smooth, and it's going to take a few tools to do that. And you're going to want to be pretty fastidious with yourself. I find that on some motorcycles, to tighten your chain, sometimes it's too easy. It's easy to tighten it too much. And then you put your bike back down off your center stand and your chain is like stretched really tight. Do not let yourself off the hook. Make sure that that chain is tensioned appropriately, right? If you go to tighten your chain and you tighten it too much, you got to put that bike up on the center stand, give that wheel a kick, knock it forward, and get it set into just the right position. It might take a few times, but that's why we do this stuff in our garage, in our driveway, in our backyard, so that we know how to do it in a comfortable, calm, relaxed place, rather than trying to figure out how to do it when you're in duress out in the fields.
Awesome. The other piece that you want to be checking your air filter regularly, and it's an easy job to learn how to do, to clean and replace your air filter. So first thing you'll want to do is gather your supplies. I like wearing gloves when I do this. The chemicals, especially air filter oil, is very sticky. The air filter cleaner is very abrasive. So I think gloves are really helpful. Removing your air filter from your bike sounds really easy. If you have a bike like I do, like I said, pop off a side panel, undo a bolt, and it pops right out. Some bikes are very difficult. I know that the air filter is buried under the gas tank and the side panels and probably 14 other things. So I make this sound easy, but I also understand that not all bikes make that happen. But remove the air filter from your bike, spray it with the cleaner. You can actually rinse it first, that loosens up the dirt, and then spray the cleaner on, or just spray the cleaner directly on. And as you're washing it, you want to be pretty gentle, right? We're not trying to wring it out because air filters are made out of foam. They're not, it's not super sturdy, but you don't have to be completely gentle. Like, you need to wash it enough to get the dirt out. Rinse it off gently and then dry completely. I have a boot dryer that actually does a really light heat that I would normally dry boots on. I toss my air filters on there. You can use a hair dryer, but you want to be careful because the air filter also is held together with some glue that a hair dryer could melt. So if you have a cool setting, or if you use a lot of distance between the filter and the hair dryer, you can dry it that way, or you can just set it in the sun and let it dry naturally. I actually keep spare air filters. Yeah, I have one on my bike and one in a Ziploc bag already oiled, so I can just do the job really quickly, and then I can let the air filter dry completely and naturally, so I'm not usually having to hit it with a hair dryer. When you put the oil on, you want to see an even color. There's a lot of different types of oil. Do your research, figure out which one you think is best. I think I'm using Bel Air in this one. And putting a bead of grease around the mating edge, so the bottom of the air filter, to where it touches the bike, actually provides a really nice seal. Replace it on the bike, and then your engine can breathe again.
Love that. All right. When it comes to maintenance, there are periodic maintenance items. You're going to find them in your manual for your motorcycle. These are going to be things like oil changes. When you first get a new motorcycle, you're going to have a very short interval right off the back, maybe 500 miles or so, or whatever, 1,000 km, whatever the case may be. But then typically you're going to have longer intervals after that. Try and make sure that you are taking good care of your motorcycle on a regular basis. If I'm financing a motorcycle like I have with BMW, I typically will take my bike to the dealership or to a certified tech for most of those maintenances, because it can improve the resale value of the bike if you're planning on selling it. But a lot of this stuff you can do on the fly. You can take care of it if you own your motorcycle outright. Game on, go for it. Make sure that you're getting in and doing all these things. So you're going to want to make sure that you're doing your oil changes, that you're checking your valves, that you're swapping your chains and sprockets, that your brake fluid is in good working order, that you're doing a flush and swapping out those pads as needed, and that making sure that your coolant is fresh and flushed and good to go.
And then Eva pointed out that she doesn't have much of a winter season down there, but for those of us who do ride less in the cooler months, it can be really helpful to keep your bike plugged into a battery tender. I add a dongle to my batteries. It's a pretty simple piece that just bolts onto the battery, hangs out the side of the bike, so I can really easily plug the battery tender into the bike. There are tenders for lithium batteries and tenders for lead acid batteries. And then this particular tender, the reason I have the picture there is it actually has both, and you can actually just switch it to whichever battery you have in your bike. So I find that to be really helpful. Also, I like to use ethanol-free gas in the winter months because I also don't put my bike up completely for the winter months, but I'm riding it less often. Gas is another one of those hygroscopic liquids. So it does pull in water from the atmosphere, and you do not want water in your engine system. You can also use fuel stabilizer if you know you're not going to be riding all winter. Fuel stabilizer it performs the same type of service for you.
I love that. Awesome. Awesome. All right, ladies, we're getting close to that time when we're going to give away the cruise tools kit, but we've got time for a few little questions. The team has texted over a few to me, and I think I'm just going to start down here towards the bottom of everything. Somebody says, I cannot for the life of me get my Tiger onto the stand. Tried the Snapjack. Any tips to make chain cleaning easier on long trips? Now I guess I'm wondering first about your center stand, and I'm wondering about the springs on your center stand, and I'm wondering if you're trying to get your bike up on your center stand while it's fully loaded, because the first thing to make life easier to get your bike on the center stand is to get all your luggage off of there, because despite the fact that there isn't a mechanical advantage because you have this set of springs, it actually lifts the bike onto the center stand if you can hit it just right, making that bike lighter by not being fully loaded with all of your panniers and all of your stuff is going to make that easier. But what do you think, Kris? Any tips and tricks for cleaning and maintaining your chain if you can't get your bike up on a center stand?
So I don't have center stands on any of my bikes. And so I actually carry with me, I wish I had it out right now. It is a long, just essentially a long pole that is adjustable height. And I can put it under one part of my bike, usually the frame, and it actually lifts my bike up off the rear wheel so that I can clean my chain. So you can just use your side stand and that other tool to actually create its own center stand. I think you could also find a good log, a 5-gallon bucket. What else have I used? I have like 3 different jacks at home. So while traveling, that wouldn't be helpful, but I think you could find different things while you're on the road as well.
Totally. Or if you're traveling with a friend, when you're on your trip, you can put that bike so that the front wheel and the center stand are on the ground, and you can lean that bike up on you, obviously using the mechanical advantage of our strong parts of our body, like our legs, having a friend help you tip the bike up, and then that rear wheel is going to spin freely as long as the bike is in neutral. Let's see. Okay, next question. How often should you clean your chain? Only when visibly dirty? What would you say, Kris?
I like to clean my chain after every off-road ride. If I'm not riding off-road, and even if I'm on a trip, I might try to clean it every 2 to 3 days. If I'm not riding off-road, I'm trying to think how I base that, because I get a little bit lazy about cleaning my chain when I'm riding on the street more. So I would say, yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Eve?
I don't know. I mean, I would say it depends. I definitely, if I'm on a long trip, I wouldn't say that I clean my chain that often. What I do is I lube my chain and I check the tension super often. Like if I'm putting a bunch of miles on my bike, I definitely am checking that chain on a daily basis, like no questions asked. As far as cleaning it though, I mean, more often than I clean my bike. I mean, there's plenty of times when I just clean my chain and don't spray off the whole motorcycle. But yeah, I would say on a regular basis, based on how much you ride, I think is probably a fair amount. Okay. Let's see. Question from Suzanne Frank. Is a toolkit that comes with the bike, a new one, complete, or do you need more tools? More tools. We need all the tools. Um, you can start this one off, Kris.
I would say in addition to like the quantity of tools that you're going to need to actually work on your bike, it is the quality of the tools. What comes with your bike is often going to break probably one of the first couple of times you use it. It's okay in a pinch, but yeah, what comes with the bike is usually very minimal, very simplistic. I'm thinking like, I don't even know that they have like the spark plug tool in there or tire irons or things that fit your axle nuts. I'm just like, what comes on the bike is so tiny.
Yeah, it's a foundation. And I would say same thing for this cruise tool set. Like this is a bike specific kit. And I will say, I will throw my boyfriend life partner Sterling under the bus. He will roll with nothing but his tire kit and his cruise tool set for his motorcycles. He has very little extras. But I even feel like a cruise tools kit is a good start. It's a good foundation. It's going to have so much of what you need, but not absolutely everything. So it's a great foundation point. But you can always add on from there, but be careful. Like tools are heavy. They're made of metal. We all know this. Don't feel like you need to bring all the tools to rebuild an engine in the field if you don't know how to rebuild an engine in the field, right? Have enough tools so that you can change your front tire and your rear tire. And then just some basic general maintenance for if something does go wrong in the backcountry and you're going to get in there and do your best to fix it. But make sure that you have everything you need for a front and rear tire change repair in the field. I think that's a great foundation and a great place to start. Speaking of tire changes, Lyra, our wonderful volunteer, asked, what tire repair kit do you recommend for tubeless tires? And we can talk about this real quick. There are tubes and tubeless tires. I carry both because I very often am, my tire kit bounces back depending on what bike I'm riding. My toolkit will mostly stay with its specific bike. But for your tire kit, you're gonna want your tire irons, your tire levers. I like these. You're going to want to have the appropriate rear axle nut and front axle tools to do them. And you'll probably want to assemble this unless, of course, you win the cruise tools kit, because I'm pretty sure that cruise tools kit is bike specific, so you can get a wheel off. For your tubeless tires, you're going to be using plugs. For tube type tires, you're going to be using patches, and you're always going to want to keep a spare tube with you. I always roll with an extra front tube because that front tube can go on your front wheel. You know, very often you'll have like a 21-inch front wheel. And so that 21-inch tube can also go around your 18-inch rear wheel or 19-inch rear wheel. It won't be ideal, but it'll be enough to get you out of a sticky situation. Anything else on that, Kris? Awesome. All right. We're coming down the final stretches. Oh, let's see. Gosh, do we have time? We have time for one more question. Let's see. Kathy Gallagher's wondering if we have a favorite air compressor. Kris, do you have a favorite air compressor?
I've been using one called Fant, I think it's called, but I love it because it's actually rechargeable. So it's a portable, so I charge it up at home instead of running it off the battery on my bike now. And I set the tire pressure I want it to go to and turn it on, and it just pumps it up. So I'm not checking the tire pressure all the time.
That is awesome. You know what my favorite air compressor is the big giant one that I keep plugged in outside that fills up my tires in like 2 seconds. That thing's so great. It's just like,
Yes.
awesome.
You could probably stick that in the Ural.
So I can stick it in the Ural. Anybody coming to Tour Tech, I'm rolling it on a Ural and I'm so pumped. I'm gonna have 3 wheels. That Ural, you don't even like, unless you go through a wheel, it comes with a whole extra wheel. So if you get a flat, you take the spare wheel off and all 3 wheels on the Ural are the same. It's the craziest thing. I'm really excited. I'm really, really excited about this.